Harlem, July 16th, 1964, 9:15 inches the morning. Lieutenant Thomas Gilligan of the New York Police Department fired his weapon and ended the life of James Powell, a 15-year-old boy, right outside Robert F. Wagner Junior High School on East 76th Street. 3 shots rang out. A black teenager lay dead on the pavement in front of his fellow students. The official version of events? Powell had been armed with a knife, had threatened the officer. Gilligan had simply acted to defend himself, a justified use of force. The matter was considered settled. The truth that everyone in Harlem understood? James Powell carried no weapon, was simply a student, was only 15 years of age, was killed by a white officer who happened to be off duty and who would never face any real accountability. One more black child's life extinguished. One more family shattered beyond repair. One more painful reminder that black lives held no value in the eyes of those who took an oath to protect and serve. When evening arrived, Harlem began to burn, not with actual flames at first, but with fury, with profound grief, with the crushing weight of generations of police violence and empty promises about equality that had never come to pass. The 1964 uprising in Harlem continued for 6 full days. More than 500 people were taken into custody, hundreds sustained injuries as police wielding nightsticks and deploying tear gas struck anyone within their reach. The streets descended into chaos as the community erupted with completely justified rage. And Bumpy Johnson, 62 years of age, Harlem's unofficial leader for more than 30 years, ensured his community made it through. Throughout those 6 days of complete disorder, Bumpy put his organization into action like a military force. 50 men initially, then over 100, as members of the community stepped forward to help. They operated with one clear mission: protect Harlem from destroying itself and from the police who were making the situation exponentially worse. They established safe zones that police couldn't penetrate without significant backup forces, shielded black-owned businesses from those who would loot them, channeled the anger away from the community itself and toward targets that truly deserved it. Police stations, government facilities, businesses owned by those who exploited Harlem for profit. When police attacked protesters, Bumpy's men stepped in, formed human shields, made arrests difficult to execute, made excessive brutality visible and documented, forced the NYPD to recognize they didn't have control over these streets. Bumpy did. When rioters attempted to destroy black-owned businesses, Bumpy's organization intervened. They explained that burning down Mrs. Johnson's grocery didn't hurt the police officers who killed James Powell. It only harmed Mrs. Johnson. It only damaged Harlem itself. By July 22nd, when the riots finally subsided, Harlem had survived in better condition than anyone had anticipated. Black-owned businesses remained largely undamaged. Families were relatively safe. The community had endured a week of police brutality and civil disorder without the total devastation that occurred in other cities during similar uprisings because Bumpy Johnson had shielded them. But this protection had come with a price. Bumpy had witnessed things during those 6 days that shook him to his very foundation, had observed police officers beating elderly women simply for being outside after the imposed curfew, had seen officers force their way into apartments and physically drag teenagers out to beat them in the middle of the streets, had seen 14-year-old children gassed and beaten with clubs for protesting the killing of their classmate, had witnessed systematic, enthusiastic police brutality that went far beyond crowd control. This was punishment. This was racism, equipped with badges and nightsticks. This was white officers relishing the chance to beat black people without facing any consequences. By the time the riots came to an end, Bumpy Johnson was deeply shaken, filled with anger, and calculating exactly how to respond. The day following the end of the riots, Bumpy sat in his office, located above Small's Paradise. Illinois Gordon, Teddy Green, and Marcus Williams were there with him, all of them completely exhausted from 6 straight days of continuous operations, all of them trying to process everything they had witnessed. "We protected the community," Illinois observed, "kept black businesses secure, prevented the worst of the destruction from happening. That counts for something. It's not sufficient, Bumpy said in a quiet voice. His tone was different now, harder than before. Illinois had known Bumpy for 2 full decades and had never heard him sound quite this way before. We shielded people during the riots, but we didn't prevent the riots from occurring in the first place. Didn't stop the police from killing James Powell. Didn't stop them from beating people during the demonstrations. All we accomplished was limiting the damage. What else could we have done? Teddy asked. We can't prevent police from acting like police. Can't stop them from resorting to violence. No, Bumpy acknowledged, but we can make them pay a cost for it. A different kind of cost, not through violence. That would simply give them justification to crack down even harder. Something more intelligent. Something that hurts them in the places where they're vulnerable. Marcus leaned in closer. What do you have in mind? Bumpy retrieved a list. Names, home addresses, precinct assignments. During the riots, I paid very close attention to which officers were the absolute worst, which ones seemed to enjoy the violence, which ones used racial language while beating people, which ones were there to inflict punishment, not to maintain any kind of order. He spread the list across the table. 37 names total. These represent the most racist, most violent officers working in Harlem precincts. The ones who beat that elderly woman on 135th Street. The ones who dragged teenagers out of their homes. The ones who called protesters animals while clubbing them with their batons. Officers we cannot bribe because they're ideologically devoted to racism. Cannot intimidate because they have full department support. Cannot remove through official channels because the NYPD shields them. Illinois examined the list, recognizing some of the names. What's your plan? I'm going to destroy them, Bumpy stated matter-of-factly. Not physically, not through violence, but I'm going to completely ruin their careers, devastate their reputations, make it impossible for them to continue working in Harlem or anywhere else for that matter. I'm going to employ psychological warfare to accomplish what violence cannot accomplish. Make them completely unemployable. Make them pariahs within their own department. Make them wish they had never put on a badge in the first place. How? Teddy asked. Bumpy smiled. It wasn't a warm expression. By creating the appearance that they're corrupt, by manufacturing the illusion that they're on my payroll, by destroying their credibility without engaging in anything actually illegal, by making every single officer on this list so toxic that the NYPD will have no choice but to get rid of them just to preserve department integrity. He looked directly at the 3 men. What we're about to undertake is going to require months of work, going to demand precision, going to require tremendous patience. But when we're finished, the 37 worst officers in Harlem will be gone. Not simply transferred somewhere else, not just suspended, gone completely, fired, unable to find work, destroyed professionally, and the NYPD will have terminated them themselves. Will have forced them to eliminate their own worst elements because we made keeping them more expensive than removing them. Bumpy assembled his core team, 20 trusted men who understood complex operations and could be counted on for precise execution. He laid out the strategy in comprehensive detail. The NYPD's greatest vulnerability is corruption. They have a significant problem with officers accepting bribes, working for criminals, selling information to the wrong people. Internal Affairs investigates this constantly. Officers suspected of being corrupt become completely untouchable. Other officers refuse to work with them, refuse to trust them, refuse to back them up in the field. We're going to exploit that exact vulnerability. We're going to make 37 racist officers appear corrupt, make it look like they're on my payroll, make it seem like they're providing me with information, accepting bribes, working for my organization. We won't actually bribe them. That would be illegal, and they wouldn't accept the money anyway. But we'll create the appearance of corruption so convincing that the NYPD will investigate them, and when they're investigated, they'll be found suspicious enough to terminate. He pulled out surveillance photographs. We've been watching these officers for weeks now. We know their daily routines, where they eat their lunch, where they go to drink after their shifts end, where they live, what their schedules look like. We know everything there is to know about them. Here's exactly how this works. Phase 1. Public contact. We approach these officers in public settings, greet them using their names, thank them loudly for their assistance, attempt to hand them envelopes in front of witnesses, make it appear like we're compensating them for services they've rendered. Phase 2. Surveillance evidence. We position envelopes near their vehicles, drop them in locations where surveillance cameras will capture it, create evidence that resembles dead drops or payment pickups. Phase 3. Community rumors. We spread information throughout Harlem that certain officers are on our payroll, make absolutely sure other officers hear about it. Let the rumors accomplish the work for us. Phase 4. Escalation. For the absolute worst officers, the most violent, most racist ones, we go even further. We photograph their homes. We uncover their associations. If they're KKK members or sympathizers, we make that information public. We make them so toxic that the NYPD simply cannot keep them employed. Illinois raised a concern. This carries risk. If they figure out what we're actually doing, they could arrest us for harassment. We're not threatening them, not bribing them, just approaching them in public settings and attempting to hand them envelopes. That's not illegal. Awkward, perhaps. Suspicious, certainly, but not illegal. And by the time they figure out what we're doing, half of them will already be under active investigation. Teddy asked, "What if they refuse the envelopes? What if they publicly reject us?" Doesn't matter in the slightest. The interaction by itself creates suspicion. Why would Bumpy Johnson approach that particular officer? Why attempt to pay him unless there was some pre-existing relationship? Even refusal appears suspicious once the seed of doubt has been planted. Marcus nodded slowly. This strategy could actually work if we're precise in our execution, if we coordinate everything perfectly, if we make every interaction appear like corruption without actually committing any crimes. Exactly, Bumpy said. We're going to wage psychological warfare. We're going to use the NYPD's own corruption problems against them, and we're going to do it so carefully that they cannot charge us with anything, even if they figure out exactly what we're doing. Target 1. Officer Michael Brennan. Brennan was positioned at the very top of Bumpy's list. 38 years of age, 10 years serving on the force, notorious for excessive violence against black residents. During the riots, witnesses observed him beat 3 separate people with his nightstick while using racial slurs. Couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be bribed, ideologically committed to racism. July 25th, 1:15 inches the afternoon. Brennan was eating his lunch at a diner on 145th Street. The place was packed, mostly officers from the 28th Precinct. Their usual gathering spot. Bumpy walked through the door, walked straight to Brennan's table, made absolutely certain everyone could see and hear him. "Officer Brennan." Bumpy's voice was loud, friendly, like greeting an old friend. "Good to see you here. Thanks for meeting me." Every single officer in the diner turned to look. Bumpy Johnson greeting Officer Brennan by name, thanking him for a meeting. Brennan looked up, confusion and alarm on his face. "I'm not meeting you. I don't know what." Bumpy sat down across from him without an invitation, pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table between them where everyone had a clear view. "The information you provided last week was extremely valuable. Very valuable indeed. This is your payment, as we discussed." "What information?" "I never." Brennan was getting angry now. His face was reddening. "I don't work for you. I've never provided you with anything. I understand completely. Discretion is important in this line of work." Bumpy slid the envelope across the table. $200 as we agreed upon. I appreciate your help with those warrant details. Helped me avoid some serious problems. Brennan stood up abruptly. "I don't want your money. I've never helped you with anything. This is some kind of setup." "No setup at all. Just payment for services rendered." Bumpy looked around at the other officers who were watching intently. "Officer Brennan has been very helpful to me. keeping me informed about operations, giving me advanced warning about raids. Very professional relationship we have. Brennan grabbed the envelope, threw it at Bumpy. I'm not taking your money. I'm not on your payroll. Everyone here knows that. Of course. You have to maintain appearances. I understand completely. Bumpy stood up, leaving the envelope on the table. I understand the position you're in. We'll talk later about this. Thanks again for everything you've done. He walked out. Behind him, 20 officers stared directly at Brennan. The envelope sat on the table in plain view. The interaction had looked exactly like a criminal paying a corrupt cop who was now trying to cover it up in front of his colleagues. Brennan looked around at the staring faces. That wasn't. I don't work for him in any way. I've never. But the seed was planted firmly. Officers were thinking, why would Bumpy Johnson approach Brennan specifically by name? Why attempt to pay him unless there was some kind of relationship already established? Why that elaborate performance unless something was actually there? Later that same day, Brennan opened the envelope in private. Blank paper. Nothing incriminating whatsoever, just paper. But the damage was done completely. Within a week, other officers were avoiding Brennan, not trusting him with sensitive information, speculating about whether he was dirty. Internal Affairs started asking questions. Brennan requested a meeting with his captain to explain the situation, but the captain was skeptical. If there's nothing there, why did Johnson approach you specifically? Why attempt to pay you in front of witnesses? Brennan had no good answer to give. Target 2, Officer James Sullivan. Sullivan was more careful than Brennan had been. Didn't socialize much with other officers, kept mostly to himself. But during the riots, he'd been one of the absolute worst. Witnesses reported him beating a 14-year-old protester while calling him racial slurs, dragging people from their homes for curfew violations that didn't actually exist. August 2nd, 3:45 inches the afternoon. Sullivan was walking his beat on Lenox Avenue. Bumpy approached with Illinois Gordon beside him. They were in a crowded area, dozens of people around, several other officers visible down the block. Officer Sullivan, Bumpy called out loud enough for everyone in the vicinity to hear. Perfect timing. I was hoping to run into you. Sullivan saw Bumpy and tried to walk away quickly. I have nothing to say to you, Johnson. Bumpy followed, matching his pace exactly. Still loud, still friendly. I understand completely. Professional discretion and all that. But I wanted to thank you for the information you provided about the raid last week. Very helpful to me. Saved me a lot of trouble. I didn't provide any information whatsoever. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course. Officially, you don't know me at all. I respect that completely. Bumpy pulled out an envelope, tried to hand it to Sullivan directly. Your payment as we agreed upon. Sorry, it's arriving late. Been very busy with everything happening. Sullivan refused to take it from him. I'm not taking anything from you. There is no payment. There is no agreement of any kind. I've never given you information about anything. Bumpy looked confused, looked at Illinois. This is James Sullivan from the 32nd Precinct, correct? That's the right man? That's Sullivan, Illinois confirmed without hesitation. Then this is for you. Bumpy tried again to hand over the envelope. $200 for keeping me informed about operations. Our usual arrangement that we have. Sullivan was getting visibly angry now. There is no arrangement. I don't work for you in any capacity. This is harassment, plain and simple. My apologies, then. Must be thinking of someone else entirely. Bumpy pocketed the envelope, turned to Illinois. Did we get the wrong Sullivan, perhaps? Don't think so. Captain Morrison said this was the right guy. At the mention of Captain Morrison's name, Sullivan went pale. Now, Bumpy was implying that Sullivan's own captain was somehow involved in this corruption network. Captain Morrison knows nothing about this because there's nothing to know, Sullivan said. Too loud, too defensive sounding. Understood completely. Sorry to bother you, officer. Bumpy walked away. Behind him, Sullivan stood on the corner, shaking with anger and fear. Dozens of people had witnessed the entire interaction. Other officers had seen Bumpy try to pay him, had heard Bumpy thank him for providing information, had heard Captain Morrison's name mentioned in the conversation. The rumors started immediately spreading. By the next day, everyone at the 32nd Precinct was talking about Sullivan. Internal Affairs opened a file on him. Sullivan's partner requested a new assignment, not wanting to work with someone under this kind of suspicion. Within 3 weeks, Sullivan was under official investigation. They found nothing concrete because there was nothing to find. But the investigation itself destroyed his reputation completely. He resigned rather than face continued suspicion and doubt. Target 3. Officer David Martinez. Martinez was different from Brennan and Sullivan. He was Latino, not white. But during the riots, he'd been just as brutal, just as enthusiastic about beating black protesters, using his minority status as cover for racism directed at a different minority group. August 8th, 7:30 inches the evening. Martinez was having drinks at a bar in the Bronx with several other officers from his precinct. Off duty, relaxed, not expecting anything unusual, Teddy Green walked directly to Martinez's table. "Officer Martinez." "Yeah. Who are you exactly?" "I work with Bumpy Johnson. He asked me to deliver this to you." Teddy put an envelope on the table. "Payment for last month's information. Mr. Johnson apologizes for the delay in getting this to you." Martinez stared at the envelope, stared at Teddy. "What the hell are you talking about?" "The raid information you provided. The details about the surveillance operation. Mr. Johnson said it was very helpful to him. This is your payment, $300. Every officer at the table was now staring at Martinez and the envelope sitting there. "I never provided any information," Martinez said. "I don't work for Bumpy Johnson in any way. I don't take bribes. This is some kind of mistake." "No mistake at all, Mr." Johnson was very specific about this. Officer David Martinez, 32nd Precinct, information about raids and surveillance operations, payment of $300, same as last time. There was no last time. "I've never." Teddy looked confused now. "You're telling me you're not the Officer Martinez who's been keeping Mr. Johnson informed for the past 6 months?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you. I've never spoken to Bumpy Johnson in my entire life." "Then I apologize for the confusion. Must be a different Martinez entirely." Teddy picked up the envelope from the table. "Sorry to bother you." He left. Behind him, Martinez sat at a table with 5 other officers who were all looking at him with suspicion and doubt written on their faces. "I don't work for Bumpy Johnson," Martinez said to them. "I never have done anything like that." "Then why would he come here specifically?" one officer asked. "Why approach you by name if there wasn't something going on?" "I don't know why, but there's nothing. I'm not corrupt." But the seed was planted firmly. The doubt was there, growing. Within days, Martinez's captain was asking questions. Internal Affairs was reviewing his cases carefully. Other officers were avoiding him in the hallways. 2 months later, Martinez resigned his position. Couldn't work in an environment where everyone suspected him of being on Bumpy Johnson's payroll. The public contacts were working exactly as planned. Officers were being investigated. Reputations were being destroyed systematically. But Bumpy wanted to accelerate the process further, make the suspicion harder to dismiss, create evidence that looked like corruption without actually being corruption at all. The envelope drop technique. Bumpy's men identified officers with predictable routines, officers who parked in the same spot every single day, who walked the same routes, who were completely predictable. They also identified which areas had NYPD surveillance cameras positioned. The department had installed cameras in certain high-crime areas to monitor drug dealing and other criminal activity. Bumpy was going to use those cameras against them. Target Officer Robert Walsh. Walsh was a detective at the 28th Precinct. During the riots, he'd been one of the officers coordinating arrests. Witnesses reported him giving orders to hit them hard and don't be gentle, one of the architects of the police brutality response. September 2nd, 6:45 inches the morning. Walsh always arrived at the precinct at 7 a.m. sharp, parked in the same spot without fail. a street with a surveillance camera monitoring a corner known for drug dealing. At Sex for TFM AM, Raymond Cole, one of Bumpy's younger men, walked past Walsh's empty parking spot, dropped an envelope on the ground near where Walsh would park, made absolutely sure the surveillance camera caught him dropping it. The envelope was sealed tight. Inside, blank paper. But from the outside, it looked exactly like the kind of envelope used for bribes. Thick, business-sized, unmarked. At 2 a.m., Walsh arrived, parked his vehicle, got out, saw the envelope on the ground, picked it up, looked around cautiously, opened it, found blank paper inside, threw it in a nearby trash can, but the surveillance camera had caught everything. Had caught someone dropping an envelope, had caught Walsh picking it up, had caught what looked exactly like a dead drop, a common method for transferring bribes or information without direct contact between parties. 2 days later, Internal Affairs reviewed that surveillance footage as part of a routine check. Saw Walsh picking up an envelope, saw him look around furtively, saw him dispose of it quickly. They started investigating immediately, pulled more surveillance footage, interviewed people in the area. Couldn't prove anything because there was nothing to prove, but the suspicion was there, firmly planted. Combined with rumors that Walsh might be providing information to criminals, the surveillance footage was enough evidence. Walsh was put on administrative leave pending investigation. 3 months later, he was fired for conduct unbecoming an officer. Target: Officer Frank Russo. Russo was one of the most violent officers during the riots. Multiple witnesses reported him beating people who were already restrained, who weren't resisting in any way, who were just being punished for protesting. September 8th, 8:15 the evening. Russo always went to the same diner after his shift ended, always parked behind the building, always came out the back door. Marcus Williams waited until Russo went inside the diner, placed an envelope on Russo's windshield under the wiper blade, clearly visible to anyone who looked, then left the area. The diner had a security camera covering the parking lot. The camera caught Marcus placing the envelope, caught the timestamp, created a permanent record. 30 minutes later, Russo came out, saw the envelope, looked around nervously, opened it. Blank paper inside. But the security footage showed him finding an envelope that someone had deliberately placed on his car, showed him checking the contents, showed what looked exactly like a bribe pickup. The diner owner, who disliked the police for various reasons, mentioned the incident to a friend. The friend mentioned it to someone else. Eventually, word reached Internal Affairs that Officer Russo had been seen receiving envelopes in parking lots. Combined with surveillance footage showing someone placing an envelope on his car, it was enough to start an investigation. Russo claimed it was blank paper, that it meant nothing at all. But why would someone place blank paper on his car specifically? Why that particular officer? Russo was suspended, then fired 6 months later. Public contacts created suspicion. Surveillance evidence added more fuel to the fire, but Bumpy wanted to ensure the rumors spread throughout the entire NYPD, wanted every officer talking about corruption, wanted the department paranoid about who might be dirty. He deployed a subtle campaign. His people would talk in bars where off-duty officers drank, would mention casually that certain officers were on Bumpy's payroll, would say they'd heard Officer X was providing information that Officer Y took bribes regularly. Never direct accusations, never provable statements, just rumors and speculation that spread like a disease through the department. I heard Brennan's been working with Bumpy for years now. Someone told me Sullivan was getting $500 a month for warrant information. Martinez apparently tipped off Bumpy about 3 different raids last month. The rumors were designed to match the public contacts perfectly. Officers who'd been approached by Bumpy were now rumored to be working for him. The public interactions gave the rumors credibility. The rumors gave the public interactions deeper meaning. Within 2 months, 15 of the 37 officers on Bumpy's list were under Internal Affairs investigation. Not because there was evidence of actual corruption, but because the combination of public contacts, surveillance evidence, and persistent rumors made them look suspicious enough to warrant investigation. And once you were under investigation, your career was effectively over. Other officers wouldn't work with you, wouldn't trust you with sensitive information, wouldn't back you up in dangerous situations. You became toxic, unemployable within the department. Even if cleared eventually, the stain remained permanently. Bumpy was systematically destroying careers without violence, without bribes, without doing anything provably illegal, just through psychological warfare and reputation destruction. For the worst officers, the most violent, most racist, most enthusiastic about brutality during the riots, Bumpy escalated his approach, went beyond making them look corrupt, made them look like active white supremacists who were bringing the KKK's ideology into the NYPD itself. Target: Officer George Whitaker. Whitaker was the absolute worst. 42 years of age, 15 years on the force. During the riots, multiple witnesses reported him not just beating protesters, but enjoying it actively, laughing while hitting people, using the most vicious racial language imaginable, making clear this was about race, not maintaining order. Bumpy's intelligence network discovered something about Whitaker. He had family connections to the Klan in Alabama. His uncle had been a Klan leader there. His brother was a current member. Whitaker himself had attended Klan meetings in the 1950s before joining the NYPD. This information was never made public because the NYPD protected him from scrutiny. But Bumpy was going to change that situation. October 15th, 8:30 inches the morning. Bumpy sent Illinois Gordon to Whitaker's home in Queens. Nice house, suburban neighborhood, white neighbors, the kind of place where Whitaker could pretend he wasn't a racist thug who spent his shifts beating black people. Illinois knocked on the door. Whitaker answered, saw a black man standing there with a camera, immediately tensed up. Officer Whitaker, Illinois asked politely, "Who are you? What do you want?" "I'm working for a community organization documenting which officers live in the neighborhoods they police versus which officers commute in from white suburbs. Can I confirm this is your residence?" "Get off my property immediately. Just need to confirm the address for our records. This is 247 Oak Street, correct? And you're Officer George Whitaker, currently stationed at the 28th Precinct in Harlem, correct?" I said, "Get off my property or I'll have you arrested for trespassing." Illinois held up the camera, took a photo of the house, took a photo of Whitaker standing in the doorway. "Thank you for your time, officer. This will be shared with the Harlem community so they know where the officers who patrol their streets actually live." Illinois left the property. Whitaker stood in his doorway, shaking with rage and fear. Someone had just photographed his house, had confirmed his address, had made clear they knew where he lived. 2 days later, Bumpy escalated further. October 17th, 2:30 inches the afternoon. Whitaker was on duty, patrolling Lenox Avenue. Teddy Green approached him in a crowded area where dozens of people could witness everything. "Officer Whitaker, I have something for you." Teddy handed him a manila envelope. Whitaker didn't want to take it. "What is this?" "Information from Bumpy Johnson. He thought you'd be interested in seeing it." "I don't want anything from Bumpy Johnson." "You should look at it. It's about your house and your family connections." Whitaker opened the envelope slowly. Inside, photographs of his house, photographs of him standing in the doorway, and a document listing his family connections, his uncle's Klan leadership, his brother's current membership, his own attendance at Klan meetings in 1952, 1953, 1954. Attached to it all a note. "Should the Harlem community know that Officer George Whitaker, who patrols their streets, has family connections to the Ku Klux Klan? Should they know he attended Klan meetings? Should they know the man enforcing law in a black neighborhood is connected to an organization that lynched black people? Or should this information remain private?" Whitaker went pale immediately. Where did you get this information?" "Mr. Johnson has extensive resources at his disposal. He knows about your family, your history, your associations. He's wondering if the NYPD knows, if your captain knows, if the black community you police knows about this." "This is blackmail. This is information. What you do with it is entirely up to you. But Mr. Johnson wanted you to know he has it in his possession, and he's deciding whether to make it public." Teddy walked away. Whitaker stood on Lenox Avenue holding evidence of his Klan connections, evidence that would destroy his career if it became public, evidence that Bumpy Johnson had in his possession and could release at any time. Whitaker went to his captain that same evening, requested immediate transfer out of Harlem, claimed personal reasons. The captain, suspicious about why Whitaker suddenly wanted to leave, started asking questions, started investigating Whitaker's background more thoroughly, found the Klan connections, found the meeting attendance, found everything that should have been discovered during initial hiring but had been overlooked or ignored. Whitaker was suspended pending investigation, then fired for failing to disclose material information during the hiring process and maintaining associations incompatible with law enforcement service. The NYPD announced they had zero tolerance for officers with extremist associations, made it a public relations victory. Look how seriously they take officer integrity. Never mentioned that they'd ignored those associations for 15 years until Bumpy Johnson forced them to act. Target: Officer Charles Bennett. Bennett was another officer with white supremacist connections, had been photographed at a rally in 1961 where KKK members were present, had made racist statements to colleagues that were reported but never acted upon. November 3rd, Bumpy sent Raymond to Bennett's house with the same approach, photographed the house, confirmed the address, made clear that Bennett's personal information was known. November 5th, delivered an envelope to Bennett while he was on duty. Inside, photographs of Bennett at the 1961 rally, photographs of him talking to known Klan members, documentation of racist statements he'd made to colleagues, and a note. Should the NYPD know about this? Should the Harlem community know the man patrolling their streets associates with the KKK? Or should this remain private? Bennett panicked immediately, went to his union representative. The representative advised him to resign before this became public knowledge. Bennett resigned within a week. The NYPD never announced why publicly, just said Bennett was pursuing other opportunities, but everyone at the precinct knew the truth. Knew Bumpy Johnson had gotten to him, knew he had information that could destroy Bennett's life, knew Bennett had chosen to leave rather than face that exposure. Target: Officer William Crawford. Crawford was the final target, the absolute worst of them all. 39 years of age, 12 years on the force, known KKK sympathizer, had been one of the most brutal officers during the riots. Multiple witnesses reported him beating people while laughing, while using racial slurs, while making clear he was enjoying the opportunity to hurt black people. Bumpy deployed the full strategy against Crawford. Public contacts, envelope drops, surveillance evidence, rumors spreading, photographs of his house, documentation of his Klan connections. His father had been a Klan member. His cousin was current leadership in a Virginia chapter. By mid-November, Crawford was under investigation. His reputation was destroyed completely. Other officers avoided him. Internal Affairs was building a case against him. His captain had recommended termination. But Crawford had a family, wife and 3 children. His wife didn't work. The family depended entirely on his police salary. If he lost his job, they'd lose everything: house, health insurance, stability. Crawford was desperate. And desperate people do desperate things. November 18th, 6:45 inches the evening. Crawford knew where Bumpy lived, knew his routines, knew that around this time, Bumpy often walked from his office to a restaurant on 135th Street. Crawford waited outside Bumpy's office. With him, 2 other officers who were also under investigation, also facing termination, also desperate. Officers Daniel Murphy and James Henderson, all 3 in civilian clothes, all 3 understanding they were taking a massive risk but having no other options remaining. At 6:05 p.m., Bumpy emerged with Illinois and Teddy beside him, saw the 3 officers waiting there, immediately understood what was happening. Crawford stepped forward, Hands visible, no weapons drawn. Mr. Johnson, we need to talk. Officers, this is unusual. What can I do for you? You know what you can do? You know what you've been doing for the past 4 months. Making us look corrupt, destroying our reputations, getting us investigated and fired. We're here to ask you to stop this. Bumpy studied the 3 men carefully, saw desperation, saw fear, saw the reality that his psychological warfare had pushed them to the breaking point. I don't know what you're referring to. I haven't done anything to any of you. You approached me in a diner, Crawford said, tried to make it look like I was on your payroll. You've done the same to dozens of officers. You've spread rumors everywhere. You've created false evidence. You've documented our personal lives. You've destroyed us completely. I had conversations in public places. That's not illegal. What happened after those conversations? Investigations, suspicions, terminations. That's not my doing. That's your department's response to suspicion. Murphy spoke up, voice shaking. I'm going to lose my job. I have 2 kids, a mortgage to pay. My wife doesn't work. If I lose my job, we lose everything we have. I'm begging you, stop this, please. Why should I stop? Because we'll change, Crawford said. I will change my behavior. I'll treat black people with respect. I'll police fairly. I'll be the officer I should have been from the beginning. I swear to God, if you stop this, if you clear our names, I'll treat every black person as an equal citizen. I'll speak up when other officers are racist. I'll be different. Henderson added, we all will change. We understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. We were wrong during the riots. We were wrong about everything. We used excessive force. We were brutal beyond justification. We brought our racism to the job. But we can change. We will change. Just please, please stop destroying us. Bumpy looked at the 3 men, all of them understanding they'd lost, understanding that Bumpy had defeated them without violence, had destroyed their careers through psychological warfare they couldn't fight against. You beat a 15-year-old during the riots, Bumpy said to Crawford. Witnesses reported you laughing while you did it, using racial language, making clear it was personal, that you enjoyed hurting that child. I know, and I'm ashamed of it. I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'm begging for a chance, for my family, for my children who will suffer if I lose everything. You have family, Bumpy said quietly, children who depend on you. That's good. James Powell had family too. Had a mother, had siblings, they depended on him. But he's dead, shot by Lieutenant Gilligan, who will never face consequences. And when Harlem protested that murder, you beat people. You laughed while doing it. You brought your racism and violence to my community, and now you're begging me to stop consequences that haven't even approached what you deserved. You're not in prison. You're not dead. You're just unemployed. That's justice. Crawford's voice broke. My children will suffer. They'll lose their home. They didn't do anything wrong, but they'll pay the price for my actions. Bumpy was quiet for a long moment. Your children will suffer because of choices you made, because you brought racism to your work, because you beat people during riots, because you laughed while hurting a community. Those consequences are on you, not me. But, he paused, considered, I'm not interested in your children's suffering. They're innocent. They deserve a father who can feed them. So here's my offer. You resign from the NYPD. All 3 of you. You leave law enforcement permanently. You never work as police officers again. You find different work. You leave Harlem alone completely. You never patrol black neighborhoods. You never bring your racism to positions of authority again. You do that and I stop. I don't spread more rumors. I don't create more evidence. I don't expose more information. You get to find new work. Your families don't lose everything. But you never wear a badge again. That's the deal. Crawford looked at Murphy and Henderson. All 3 nodded in agreement. We accept. We resign. We leave law enforcement. We never come back to Harlem. We become different people. We swear it. Good. Resign tomorrow. Submit your resignations citing personal reasons. Don't mention this conversation. Don't mention me at all. Just leave. And when you leave, remember what you learned here. That racism has consequences. That brutality has costs. That psychological warfare can destroy you more completely than any violence could. That black people aren't powerless victims waiting for you to abuse them. We have power. We have intelligence. We have the ability to fight back in ways you never anticipated. Remember that, and make sure every officer you know remembers that, too. Crawford nodded. We'll remember. We'll tell others. Bumpy Johnson protects Harlem in ways we never understood. We were fools to think we could abuse that community without answers coming. The 3 officers left, walked away into the Harlem evening. Within a week, all 3 had resigned, left law enforcement, found other work, never returned to Harlem, never wore badges again. And the story spread through the NYPD like wildfire. The story of how Bumpy Johnson had psychologically destroyed dozens of officers without violence, without bribes, without doing anything illegal. Just through reputation destruction, strategic rumors, and making officers look corrupt enough that the department had to fire them. By December 1964, Bumpy's 4-month campaign had achieved devastating success. Officers fired or forced to resign, 23. 23 of the 37 officers on Bumpy's list were no longer working in Harlem. Fired for suspicion of corruption, for Klan associations, for various investigations that found enough smoke to assume fire even without proof. Or resigned, rather than face continued investigation and certain termination. Officers transferred. 8. 8 more requested transfers out of Harlem, claimed personal reasons, but everyone knew why. They'd been targeted by Bumpy's campaign, had been approached publicly, had envelopes placed near their cars, had rumors spread about them, hadn't been fired yet, but knew it was coming. Better to transfer than be terminated. Officers under investigation. 6. 6 remained under active internal affairs investigation. Would likely be fired within months as the investigations concluded. Total removal, 37 of 37. By March 1965, every single officer on Bumpy's original list was gone. Not a single one remained working in Harlem. All removed through a psychological warfare campaign that made them look corrupt without Bumpy doing anything provably illegal. The NYPD had done the work themselves, had investigated their own officers, had found enough suspicion, even without proof, to terminate or transfer them, had cleaned their own ranks because Bumpy made keeping those officers more expensive than getting rid of them. Department-wide impact. The campaign changed how NYPD operated in Harlem completely. Officers were more careful, more professional, less openly racist because they'd seen what happened to officers who brought excessive brutality and racism to Harlem Patrol. They'd seen careers destroyed, seen reputations ruined, seen men begging Bumpy Johnson to stop, showing weakness that destroyed their credibility forever in law enforcement circles. Internal Affairs became paranoid, started investigating any officer Bumpy Johnson was seen talking to, creating a chilling effect where officers avoided any contact with Bumpy or his organization to avoid suspicion, which was exactly what Bumpy wanted. Officers who were afraid to even be seen near him. Officers who understood that operating in Harlem meant facing consequences for misconduct that went beyond departmental discipline. Over the years, the story of Bumpy's 1,964 post-riot campaign became legend, told and retold, modified in the telling, but always carrying the same core truths. After the police killed James Powell and beat people during the riots, Bumpy Johnson declared war on racist cops. Not with violence, with psychological warfare. He'd approach officers in public settings, greet them by name, try to hand them envelopes in front of witnesses, made it look like they were on his payroll without doing anything illegal. He'd drop envelopes near their cars where surveillance cameras could see it happening, made it look like dead drops, made Internal Affairs investigate them. For the worst officers, the ones connected to the KKK, he'd photograph their homes, document their associations, threatened to make it public unless they resigned. Within 4 months, he destroyed the careers of 37 officers, got them fired or forced to resign, cleaned the NYPD's worst elements out of Harlem without firing a single shot. 3 of them came to him begging him to stop, promising they'd change, promising they'd respect black people as equals. That's how completely he'd broken them. The details varied in different versions. Some versions claimed 50 officers were removed. Others claimed Bumpy actually bribed some of them, then exposed the bribes publicly. Still, others claimed violence was involved somewhere. But every version agreed on core truth, that after the 1964 riots, Bumpy Johnson had waged psychological warfare against the NYPD's most racist officers, had destroyed their careers through reputation, destruction, and strategic manipulation, had proven that black people weren't powerless against police brutality. They could fight back in ways police never anticipated. This legend was real. Bumpy did destroy those officers' careers, did force resignations and terminations, did prove that psychological warfare could remove racist cops more effectively than violence. But the larger system didn't change at all. Lieutenant Thomas Gilligan, who shot James Powell, was never charged, never faced trial, was eventually promoted, retired with full pension. The officer who sparked everything faced 0 consequences. The NYPD continued using excessive force, continued killing black people. The riots didn't change that fundamental reality. Bumpy's campaign didn't change that either. Individual officers were removed, but the institutional racism remained firmly in place. More James Powells would die. More riots would erupt. More communities would burn. The cycle continued for decades, continues still. But in late 1964, Bumpy Johnson did what he could do, protected his community during riots, then systematically destroyed the careers of the officers who'd brutalized that community. Proved that black people had power, had intelligence, had the ability to fight institutional racism through strategy when direct confrontation failed. That was the legacy. That was the legend. That was what people remembered 50 years later when discussing how to respond to police brutality without becoming martyrs. Bumpy Johnson showed them how. Not with violence that would justify crackdowns, but with psychological warfare, with reputation destruction, with making officers unemployable without doing anything provably illegal. The police killed a 15-year-old student. Bumpy Johnson spent 4 months destroying the careers of the officers who brutalized the community during the protests, made them beg him to stop, made them promise to treat black people as equals, made them resign and leave law enforcement forever. That was November 1964. That was the legend. That was what happened when you brought racism and brutality to Bumpy Johnson's Harlem and thought there'd be no consequences coming. The official system offered no justice, so Bumpy created his own. Not perfect, not complete, but real and devastating to the officers who thought badges made them untouchable. 3 of them came begging on a street corner at night, asking Bumpy to stop destroying them, promising they'd change, promising they'd respect black people as equal citizens. That image, 3 white officers begging a black criminal to show them mercy. That became the enduring symbol of what Bumpy achieved. A reversal of power so complete, it made police officers beg someone they'd considered beneath them. That was the legend. That was the reality. That was psychological warfare executed perfectly against institutional racism. And it worked. For 4 months, in 1964, it worked. 37 officers removed. Dozens more made cautious. The whole department understanding that Harlem wasn't powerless, that Bumpy Johnson could destroy careers without violence. That racism in Harlem carried consequences they couldn't escape. That was justice. Not perfect justice, not complete justice, but real justice delivered when official channels offered none. That was Bumpy's legacy from the 1,964 riots, not just protecting the community during chaos, but systematically destroying the officers who'd brutalized that community, proving that psychological warfare could achieve what violence never could. making racist cops afraid, making them careful, making them understand that Harlem would fight back, not with bullets, with intelligence, with strategy, with reputation destruction that ended careers more permanently than any shooting could. That was November 1964. 3 officers begging Bumpy Johnson for mercy, promising to change, promising to treat black people as equals, admitting that psychological warfare had defeated them more completely than violence ever could. That was the moment everyone remembered. The moment that proved Bumpy's strategy had worked. The moment that became legend. And the moment that taught a generation of Harlem residents that power came in many forms, that intelligence could defeat brutality, that strategic thinking could accomplish what direct confrontation couldn't. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. That was what changed everything.